Hello everyone, I'm Daniel Seberg in New York, and welcome to this edition of Money Matters. Each year, millions of people promote their products and exchange ideas at thousands of conventions, conferences, and trade shows around the world. Now, for small businesses, these events can be a perfect opportunity to break into an industry or establish yourself as a legitimate player. Here to help us understand the value of trade shows for small businesses, author of the book You Can Still Win, and entrepreneur Andre Taylor. Andre, thanks for being with us today.
Good morning, Dan.
So, I just returned from the Consumer Electronics Show out in Las Vegas. Massive trade show, about 140,000 people. Of course, there are much smaller ones, maybe with hundreds of people or even a few thousand. So help us define what exactly is a trade show for folks.
I'm glad you mentioned the Consumer Electronics Show because it's an example of a show like the Detroit Auto Show that also just happened that is signaling a comeback to trade shows and conventions. Trade show is essentially an industry gathering where companies showcase their best products. They talk about new industry events. They come face to face with some of their best customers. And for small businesses, it can be a particularly great moment in some ways in flipping the switch, in letting people know that you're in an industry, that you're legitimate, that you have credibility, and it can signal the discussion of what you have to offer and really set in motion a lot of very positive things for you as an organization.
Right. Now, we mentioned electronics, and you talked about the auto show. What other industries have got trade shows?
Well, there are trade shows and conventions for just about every industry. They're big, they're small. For example, you have coming the National Restaurant Show, and you have shows in music, you have shows in home decor. So there's a wide range. No matter what business you're in, there is a show where there's a gathering of hundreds, sometimes thousands of people who can really make an impact on your business.
And how do you justify the costs involved? I mean, sometimes there's an entry fee or getting a little bit of a booth set up. Of course, there may be travel fees involved as well. What's the sort of cost to benefit ratio when we're talking about getting yourself into a trade show?
Well, these trade shows can be quite costly at times, depending on how far you go. Typically, to get into a trade show, it's really just the cost of attendance. I mean, it varies depending on the show actually, but sometimes it's just paying a fee to get into the show. If you want to exhibit, sometimes it's thousands of dollars more. And as you've mentioned, you have to factor in travel, you have to factor in the cost of shipping product and marketing costs. But for some folks, this can really be a substantial impact on your business because you can actually come face to face with just so many people who are great candidates for your products.
All right. Well, let's help us map out a game plan to get the most out of a trade show. It seems to me a lot of times deals are often done behind closed doors, not necessarily on the actual trade show floor. What are some tips you can give to us?
You're absolutely right. A lot of deals happen behind closed doors, and one of the keys I think is to really build a relationship with some of the potential buyers and some of the folks in the industry before you get there. Part of the allure of a trade show is that you're going to have thousands of people who think the same way. And in some ways, for a small business, it's an equalizer. So one of the things you want to do is you want to network sufficiently. You want to obviously you want to sell effectively, and you want to find a way that you can learn enough about what's going on in the industry so that you can understand what the next steps are for you to advance discussions and advance the marketing of your product.
And it seems to me that a trade show is a great opportunity to brush up on your social skills, your networking, because it's one thing to just set up a booth at the trade show, and even if you've got a great product, if you're not out there on the floor talking to folks, they're not going to do business with you down the road.
You're absolutely right. This is a social event, and it's important to get out there and shake hands and really use your time effectively. There are so many people in the industry that sometimes you don't know until you get there, and you're going to be surprised when you go to a trade show because there are going to be products that you haven't seen, companies you haven't seen, approaches you haven't seen. So it's really important that when you go to a trade show, you become social, that you really become active in the process, and you keep your eyes and ears open. There's a lot to learn.
And how do you measure results? I mean, I guess it's one thing to count the number of business cards you've got in your briefcase afterwards, but how do you come away from a trade show feeling like it was a worthwhile investment?
Well, there are a couple of things you can count. Of course, you can count sales, whether you were successful at closing business. But I think the number of contacts you develop, an understanding of the competition, an understanding of the discussion that's going on in your industry, these are very, very important things because sometimes in a trade show you won't you wouldn't otherwise have this kind of exposure. Of course, we also should talk about the educational sessions that go on during these events. There's a lot to learn directly in those kinds of situations as well. You can learn something that can catapult your business as a result of one of these sessions.
And what's the best way to go about finding these trade shows that are connected to your particular business?
Well, in every industry, there are trade associations that have a sort of a handle on the big events that happen in the industry. And a lot of these trade shows are connected to trade associations. So sometimes as a member of the association, you'll have a nice window in. In other cases, you'll be able to participate even if you're not in the industry, as long as you can demonstrate that you're active in some way. The key is to look at your trade journals, become familiar with people who are in the industry, and you'll learn about the kinds of events that are coming up. And
Andre, we've just got about a minute or so left. Some final thoughts from you, and what to do when the trade show is over as well. That doesn't mean you stop all of that networking and working on your business, obviously.
Absolutely not. And one of the things we find with trade shows is so many people go to a show and actually don't follow up on contacts. I would say the number one thing you can do to really assist your efforts and improve your marketing is to follow up on the folks that you meet in these situations. A lot of times when you get back home, the allure is gone, and you sort of feel that the event is over and you're not as excited about it. Those contacts are still quite relevant. What you learned is quite relevant, and you need to come back to that excitement and really put some effort into building those contacts, building those relationships, and beginning a discussion that can turn into a profitable sale.
Try to keep that momentum going. All right. Well,
exactly.
Thanks for those great tips. Andre Taylor, small business expert and author of the book, You Can Still Win. Thanks very much for that great advice.
My pleasure, Dan.
Well, in today's Tech Bites, breaking news this morning. Apple CEO Steve Jobs has announced he will be taking a medical leave of absence for a medical condition to focus on his health. Now, previously, Jobs did take a leave of absence in 2009 for a liver transplant. He's also battled a rare form of pancreatic cancer over the years. Next, taxes in a snap. Intuit, the maker of the popular TurboTax software, is out with SnapTax for your smartphone. Take a photo of your W-2 and the program fills in the numbers. Tap File Now and your forms are on their way. Well, Hewlett-Packard is set to debut new tablets and netbooks. The devices run on an updated version of the WebOS operating system, which HP got when it bought Palm last summer. Word is the launch date is February 9th. For more on all these stories and all your tech headlines, just check out the technology page of abcnews.com. That's all the Money Matters for now. I'm Daniel Seberg in New York. Stay tuned for more news that's good to know.